This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan.
Hey beautiful soul, it's Jacqueline here from the Labia Chronicles, where I discuss all things lichen sclerosus. So if you have lichen sclerosus and are looking to be empowered by information, find acceptance, and reclaim your life, then please subscribe to this video and keep on watching. And if you have a friend, family, loved one with lichen sclerosus, and you want to learn more about lichen sclerosus so that you can better support them on their LS journey, then also please subscribe to this channel and share it with them. All right, so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about a facet of mental health and lichen sclerosus. This is going to be a very vulnerable and sensitive topic for me to discuss. It's very personal, but I believe that transparency is transformative and healing, and it's very important for me to always be honest with you and just super clear about all of the ups and downs in my lichen sclerosus journey. So this video is going to be very much like a sit down and chat with me. I'm going to kind of talk about a facet of mental health that I really struggled with, particularly early in my diagnosis. And this is something that kind of came up around the same time that I was compulsively checking my vulva. So I do have a video on compulsive vulva checking. Definitely go check that out. I will leave a card, I think here. We're just going to go with here for this video, and I will find out if that's the right side that I'm pointing to. If not, it'll show up on the other side. So I will leave a link for that up top in the card and also in the description box if you want to check that out. So this kind of emerged at the same time that I was compulsively checking my vulva. And this is the kind of habit, or the compulsive, I think I would say, habit of comparing my vulva to other vulvas. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. So as always, if you find the information in this video helpful, if it resonates with you, and if you want more videos on mental health and lichen sclerosus, then please give me a thumbs up, a like, so that I know to keep making mental health and LS content. All right, so let's jump into compulsively comparing vulvas. All right, so in my previous video on compulsive vulva checking, you will know that that compulsive habit or behavior, that compulsive behavior was very much fueled by medical concerns. So I was compulsively checking because I was terrified of my LS progressing or developing into cancer. There was a lot of self-blame that was kind of fueling this habit, but it was very much grounded in medical concerns. So again, I will leave that video linked in the description box if you want to go check that out. Unlike compulsive checking, my compulsive comparing was grounded purely in aesthetic concerns. That means that what I was really concerned about, why I was comparing vulvas and what was going on in my head, had nothing to do with any kind of physical symptoms or medical concerns. It was purely about how my vulva looked and how other people's vulvas looked. So let's talk a bit about how that kind of started. So when I was diagnosed with lichen sclerosus, if you watched my diagnosis story, which I will leave up here and in the description box below, if you've watched that story, you'll know that when my GP diagnosed me, she asked me, and this is when she was doing the visual exam, so she, had me scooch down on the little table, and she said to me, first she said, "This is lichen sclerosus." And then she immediately followed up with, "Has your vulva always looked like this?" And that sentence really struck a chord with me. It really had a deep impact because I realized in that moment that I was really unfamiliar with that part of my body. I realized that I didn't have an answer to her question. I didn't know what I really used to look like. I mean, I might have had a vague idea, but I never really sat down, took a mirror out, and examined myself down there and, explored what I look like, all of that. I never really did that. And so shortly after, when I was diagnosed, I kind of wanted to not only see what I looked like down there, but I wanted to see what other vulvas looked like, what non-lichen sclerosus vulvas looked like, because I didn't really have any basis of comparison. I didn't really understand, like, what should a non-lichen sclerosus vulva look like. So I did what we all do when we have questions and curiosities. I went to Google. So I plugged in, I think I just plugged in like vulvas or something, and I Google image searched, and then there's just heaps of vulvas on my screen. And I just consumed these images with like this feverish hunger. Like, I just went picture by picture. I couldn't stop looking. And what really struck me while I was looking was how profoundly different I looked from those images. Now, of course, I know rationally, I knew that all vulvas look different. They come in different shapes, sizes, textures, and those are all great. There is nothing wrong if you are a little bit different, if you've got a little bit more labia minora, if your clitoral hood is bigger, if the clitoral hood is smaller. This is very normal. We will see a large diversity of vulva types. But nonetheless, my vulva didn't look anything like what I was looking at. In fact, there were parts of the vulva that I couldn't even identify on my body. For example, my labia minora. At that point, they were fused. Basically, the majority of them had resorbed. There was a little, like, from the base up, there was a little resorption, a lot of resorption, and then a little bit of fusing, and then that was it. And so the vulvas that I was looking at, even those with some labia minora, maybe they were small, but I didn't see any that just had like no labia minora, where they are just completely shrunken back and then just resorbed with the surrounding vulvar anatomy. So that became a big kind of obsessive thing. I just kept looking at different vulvas, and I wasn't just looking from like a medical or curious or objective kind of perspective. I was looking at it through a lens of comparison. And this comparison had deep, deep, deep repercussions on my mental health. So let's talk about that. Okay, so my mental health took a deep, 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 deep plummet downward as I continued to search for images of vulvas and look at them and compare my own, because remember that at this time I am simultaneously Google searching images of, quote, normal, healthy, non-LS vulvas, and at the same time I am also looking at my own vulva and checking it over 50 times a day. So I'm basically playing ping pong back and forth between looking at my own vulva, looking at, other people's vulvas, and then comparing them. And this comparison was very unfair, and this comparison was very mean and harmful to myself. So when I was comparing, this act of comparing very much reinforced this narrative in my head that my vulva was wrong, it was disfigured, it was abnormal, it was gross. And these feelings, these thoughts, then added and, really amplified feelings of shame and disgust and depression. So, my mental health, I was really struggling there, because when I would see images of vulvas that had labia minora, regardless of their size, they just had them, it just told me, like, you are abnormal, yours is abnormal, you are gross. So I really kind of fell into this kind of body dysmorphic, self-disgust, self-hate. I became obsessed with the image of my vulva. I became obsessed with the aesthetic. I was obsessed with how my vulva looked. And I just felt like I had never felt uglier and more disgusting in my entire life than in those early stages of my lichen sclerosus journey. Those feelings were so deep, they were so powerful, that they moved and grew from being your vulva is ugly and abnormal and gross to you as a whole, you, Jacqueline, head to toe, are gross, ugly, abnormal, wrong, all of these things, which of course threw me into a really deep depression. And then this also obviously was going to have an impact on my relationship with my husband, because, you know, if I'm seeing myself as ugly, gross, and wrong, I obviously don't want him anywhere near that area. And at this time, as many of you know, if you've been following my journey, we did actually put sex off the table for about a year. And we were doing other things during that year, but nothing relating to my vulva, because I just couldn't. You know, oral sex was off the table. With him giving the oral sex to me, that was off the table because I didn't want him down there. I thought, like, why would I want to put him through that? Why would I subject him to such ugliness and grossness and wrongness? So yeah, it really had deep impacts on all aspects of my life. And, you know, interestingly, you would have thought, okay, this behavior of compulsively comparing vulvas and looking at images and then looking at your own, you would think that because that behavior is causing me so much profound mental distress, you would think that I would just stop, right? If a behavior is giving you an undesirable result, why would you keep doing it? Well, that's a good question. And all I can say is that with mental health, that kind of irrational pull is often stronger than the rational, logical voice. So even though I knew deep down, this behavior is causing you harm, the desire to continue was stronger than it was stronger than me. The pull towards that compulsive behavior was like I had no control over it. It was almost like, you know, I was a puppet and some mastermind was just kind of pulling the strings and making me do the things I was doing. The pull was just very, very strong. So I have so far discussed my early journey with comparing and the impact that had on my mental health, on my relationship, etc. Now I want to talk a little about the later parts of my journey and how I kind of transitioned away and ultimately stopped this behavior. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I don't have a perfect, foolproof checklist for how to stop compulsively comparing if that is something that you struggle with in any capacity. The truth is my journey kind of away from that behavior was very messy, was very slow, I think. At least it was slower than I would have wanted. I mean, of course, we all, when something is bad is happening, we all want to kind of just turn that switch off. But I think it was more of a gradual dimming than a quick turning it off. So as you know, if you watched my video with compulsive checking, early in my diagnosis, I did seek out a sex therapist because I knew that there was going to be big repercussions for my mental health. I already knew there was a lot of trauma built up over the years of, you know, being gaslit, being dismissed, and living with so much discomfort and confusion, you know, because it's very confusing when you are experiencing such severe symptoms and doctors look at you and be like, you're fine, just chill out. So there was a lot, and I knew that I would need a professional to help guide me through some of those mental health issues that were particularly related to lichen sclerosus and sex. So I got a sex therapist, and this is definitely something that I spoke about with her. And we probably spoke for months working through this. I mean, I guess there was two pieces to this. So we worked through the comparison piece, but then we also worked through that kind of disgust and body dysmorphia, with me feeling gross and ugly down there. So I did a lot of work with my therapist on this, and that was so crucial for my journey. That really was. I mean, when it comes to almost any mental health issue and lichen sclerosus, my therapist, played a huge role in my healing journey. So that was definitely one thing that really helped me. And then I think another thing, honestly, was just time. And I think it was time. I think I needed time to process my diagnosis. I think I needed time to grieve. I think that was a big, big piece. And grieving, if you have grieved anything in your life, you know that takes time. And you know that is a kind of up and down kind of journey. So I really needed to grieve what happened to my vulva. I needed to grieve the loss of my labia minora. I needed to grieve the architectural changes that had happened unbeknownst to me for the longest time. So there was, the processing of the diagnosis itself. There was the grieving of my vulva, of what happened to my vulva. There was sex therapy. I think those were three really big things that helped me work and move away from compulsively comparing. And if you are new to my channel, I just want to take a little minute to talk about the Grief Project. So the Grief Project is a project that I developed, I believe at the end of 2021. I'm not really good with dates, but I think around the end of 2021. And basically it is a space on my website where folks can submit their experience, their story. They can share their journey with grief and lichen sclerosus, because I acknowledge that grief shows up differently for all of us. But not only that, we're all grieving different things. So for me, I was grieving the loss of anatomy that I never really knew. Some folks grieve the loss of anatomy that they knew very well. Other folks grieve the person that they were in their relationship. Other folks grieve for facets of motherhood, grieving the loss of the mother that they thought they would be. And there's so many facets to grief and LS. So I wanted to create an intentional and safe space for folks to discuss grief, because I find that art can be very healing and very therapeutic. So I wanted it to be kind of cathartic for the person submitting a piece, and then I wanted it to feel very validating for others reading this, for them to say, oh my gosh, me too, I'm not alone in this, or I didn't have a word to describe what I was going through, and reading this submission, I realized that I am grieving. So I wanted it to be very healing, I wanted it to be very validating, and I wanted to create a safe space for others to share their journey with grief. So if you are unfamiliar with this, definitely go check it out at www.loslabia.com/grief. And while you're there, check out the main page where I describe, the project, and if you want to contribute to the project, how you can contribute, and so on and so forth. So definitely check that out. Okay, so we had those three things. And then I think another thing that really helped me was actually, in some strange way, getting my symptoms under control. So for me, when my symptoms were at their worst physically, like when they were very, very present, when it was like all of the burning and all of the itching and all of the discomfort and all of the stinging and burning from my fissures and my cuts, when that was at its worst, my mental health was probably at its worst as well, because those physical sensations were so strong. They were like a constant, you know, big billboard poster reminder that there was something off with me. There was that big reminder of like, hello, you have lichen sclerosus and this sucks. So it was really hard for me to kind of disengage mentally. It was really hard for me to kind of bring down the negative feelings mentally because I had those very loud reminders. So I think that as I started to heal my lichen sclerosus, and to be clear, when I say heal, I do not mean cure. As of March 2022, when I'm filming this, there is no cure. When I say heal, I'm talking about just kind of repairing the skin and getting the symptoms under control, getting the inflammation under control. So that's what I'm kind of talking about, you know, healing those open cuts, those fissures, allowing them to heal. So as my symptoms started to get more manageable, and if you've read my blog post on progress, you'll know that that actually took me quite some time for my symptoms to really shut off. So if you want to hear about progress and expectations and my healing journey and what that looked like, you can check out my blog piece at www.losslabia.com/progress. I will leave that linked in the description box below. And so as my symptoms started to improve, it was easier for me to kind of slowly turn down those negative voices and those behaviors in my head. So I think all of this in conjunction with those three other things really helped me slowly, bit by bit, start to move away from the compulsive checking, because I didn't have that like billboard, you know, you have lichen sclerosus kind of constant, very loud reminder. I was able to kind of disengage from seeing everything through an LS lens, and now LS sometimes appears, but not always, and there's more of space for other thoughts in my head that are not related to lichen sclerosus. And then I think one last thing that kind of really helped me move away from the comparing was reminding myself that this behavior is only harming me. Now, this is something that I will admit would not have helped me in the beginning. In the beginning, the compulsion was too strong, the mental health was too ramped up for me to be able to kind of acknowledge some kind of rational statement like that. But later, as we kind of dimmed the volume on those compulsions, on those negative thoughts, then when the temptation came, like I was scrolling and I was like, oh, let me go check Reddit or Google or the vulva gallery or something and like look at vulvas again. Then when that compulsion kind of would bubble to the surface, I would remind myself, this is not benefiting you in any way. And that would kind of help me set the phone down. I would go do something else. Maybe wash some dishes, maybe do some chores, maybe do my hair. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but I would do something else. I would set the phone aside and do something else. But again, I don't think that that strategy is always helpful in the beginning when the mental health is just so predominant. But that is something that definitely helped me later. And so now I want to kind of end this video by talking about where I'm at now with my compulsive comparing. So nowadays, I don't really compare my vulva to anyone's anymore. I do look at images of vulvas, although the reason why I look at vulvas now is very different from why I was looking at them initially. Initially, it was through a lens of comparison and aesthetic obsession, and now it's from more of a clinical perspective. So now I'm looking at them more when I'm doing research on lichen sclerosus, when I'm reading medical articles. A lot of them have figures, before and after figures, and I am now able to look at LS vulvas and non-LS vulvas without any emotional baggage. I'm simply looking at two vulvas. That's it. And there's no, oh, mine doesn't look like that, or, you know. I mean, of course, there are some vulvas where I'm like, man, that's beautiful. I wish mine could look like that. But I kind of feel that in this lighthearted way, almost like in a, ooh, I wish I had naturally curly hair or something like that. But like my wanting naturally curly, beautiful, luscious hair doesn't really cause me much mental distress. Just in the way that now I can see a pair of labia minora and be like, ooh, I want those. But I'm not beating myself up. And me acknowledging the beauty of another vulva no longer diminishes the beauty of my own. And I actually had this moment that I'm going to share with you. And this is like, I know. Super TMI, but that's just kind of who I am. I'm very TMI and very, here I am. So I am a part of the LS Warriors, which is a lichen sclerosus membership that is off of social media. This was created by Kathy from Lichen Sclerosus podcast. And I will have some videos in the future about my experience in the Warriors and what that is like. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you do want more details immediately, and you're like, I want to join this awesome membership, cool. I will leave a link in the description box below and you can check out that page, see if this sounds like something you'd be into, and then you can sign up or you can DM me for details. But anyway, so I was in this group and I shared this very TMI moment with them. So this is going to sound kind of funny. So I know that when an aroused vulva will look different than a non-aroused vulva. The aroused vulva, certain anatomical parts such as the labia minora, the clitoris, they become more enlarged due to increased blood flow from the arousal. So one time after I had finished masturbating, I was like, ooh, I wonder if since I'm aroused, like maybe my clitoris will be bigger, maybe I'll be able to see her from underneath that buried hood, like maybe I'll see a little something. So I decided to pull out a mirror, again, not in a comparative way, not like really just through a lens of curiosity, like, will I see a noticeable difference? Will I be able to see a little bit of the clitoris that I couldn't see before? So I pulled out a mirror and pardon me, and I looked at my vulva, and to be honest, I don't really know that I noticed much enlargement of the clitoris. I definitely couldn't see much more than I normally could, but I had this beautiful moment where I was looking and I thought, I'm beautiful. My vulva is beautiful. And I thought that so genuinely. It wasn't forced. It was just such an authentic moment where I looked and I thought, I'm beautiful. My vulva is beautiful. Even though my clitoral glands is buried under the hood, even though I am super, super tiny down there and I don't really have much labia minora left, I was just like, I'm beautiful. And I love my vulva, even though she's lost some anatomy, even though she has LS, I love her. And I think that was like a 1.5, maybe even 2-year journey for me to get to that point where not only was there acceptance, but there was love and gratitude and genuine love and gratitude. So I think that was like a really beautiful moment in my journey. So I definitely shared that with my LS family in the Warriors. I let them know about this moment and they were all cheering me on, and it was really, really awesome and empowering and moving. So that is where I am at now. So in closing, I just want to say to you that if you currently, or if you ever felt that your vulva was abnormal or disfigured or wrong or gross or ugly, I hear you. I hear you so hard. I felt like that for such an incredibly long time. And you're definitely not alone in this. I speak to a lot of folks with lichen sclerosus that tell me something similar, that tell me they also have a troubled relationship with their vulva, that tell me they don't feel attractive, they don't feel feminine, they don't feel, whatever adjective they want to feel, they don't feel it, and they feel the opposite in a negative form. So I just want you to know that you are not alone in this, that you too can one day move to a place of acceptance and finding beauty in your vulva. But that is going to be your own journey, and that is going to take the time that it takes. You could maybe get there in a couple months, or you might be like me and need 2+ years to get there. But what I want to convey is there is hope that you can get there. And there are steps that you can take to address these issues, such as working with a therapist or a counselor. Also, joining a support group if a counselor or therapist isn't available or accessible to you. A support group can be a really good place to kind of process and work through those emotions with other people that genuinely understand. That in itself can be really healing, just to talk to somebody that gets it, like fully gets it. And, another thing is to process and work with and work through grief, if that's something that is a part of your journey. That is something that was a part of my journey and was really helpful for me in moving away from that comparative behavior. All right, so that is it for this video. I hope that this resonated with you. I hope that, you got something out of this. I hope that you leave with a bit of hope, knowing that I was in the, abyss of mental health issues and, depression and all of that. And in time, I slowly moved away from that space towards gratitude, gratitude, but acceptance and love. So I just want to send you so much love, because the mental health piece is really, really heavy for many of us. Please share your journey, your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if this is something you struggle with. Let me know if this is something you don't struggle with, if you've struggled with it, but you are now doing well. Let me know what tips, or let the LS community at large, anyone watching this video, share those tips so that we can all learn as a group, as a family, as a community together. All right, that is it for this one. I will catch you in the next one.